Hi everybody, today we're going to talk about getting started on your research paper rough draft. Yes, it takes time, but I'm sure you can do it. Some things to consider before you write. Have you completed your research and reading? Have you taken notes on your sources? I talked about this in a previous lecture that in addition to finding all your research and reading it carefully, there's a crucial step that you must take where you gather the best information from each source in the form of quotations or paraphrases and put them either on index cards or find your own method. But basically take the best information from each source so that you can have that in front of you as you're starting to plan your paper. You can move it around. So hopefully you've already taken notes on your sources. You've hopefully brainstormed about the topic, put some thought into it, figured out where you stand, what your views are. In other words, do you know what you want to say? You don't want to start writing not really knowing where you're taking this paper. You should know what your end goal is. Is your outline in good shape? Do you need to revise it? Do you need more help from me? It's crucial that you have a very good plan before you start writing a research paper. This is a lengthy, complex essay, and if you dive into it without a good plan, chances are you'll get lost or you'll have a major problem with organization. You've really got to follow the writing process to do a good research paper and create a very strong outline. You probably will want to even fill in more details than the outline you turned in to me just for yourself so you really know what each paragraph is going to say. So if you've answered yes to all these questions, you're ready to write a rough draft. Using sources. This is part of the planning. You don't want to just say, oh, it's required that I use each source once. That's not going to be enough. You need to choose the best information from each source and carefully weave it into each paragraph. So I suggest that you look at your note cards or whatever form of note-taking you've done and figure out what paragraph, what's going to go in what paragraph and add to your outline that way. Some paragraphs may have several quotations or paraphrases, and others may have minimal, depending on the topic and the paragraph. It's really going to help you to review the example essays I've posted to see how they cite sources as well. Be sure to cite your sources carefully and correctly as you go. I've had a few students in the past show me a rough draft and tell me, oh, I'll cite my sources later when I revise. That is a really bad idea. It just leads to mistakes, and I've seen it happen. You think you're going to cite the source and then you forget and you plagiarize. It has happened and you get a 0. I don't want that to happen to anybody. So as you go, cite your sources correctly. Don't tell yourself you'll go back and figure it out later. Look it up then, cite it carefully. And also remember, you can't just kind of slap quotations here and there. I kind of talked about this already, but your job is to weave the quotations into the fabric of your own ideas in the essay. So you've got to set them up and comment on them. And also be sure that you establish the credibility of sources. For example, if you're writing an essay that's on a health-related topic and you have a great quotation from a Harvard professor of nutrition, you don't want to leave that out. You want to say, Dr. So-and-so, a professor of nutrition at Harvard, states, and then give your quote. If you just give the person's name, we don't know that they're an expert. We don't know what their credibility is. We're less likely to take their information seriously. So we want to set up our sources. And make sure that you follow the guidelines discussed in my previous lecture about sources that you've hopefully just watched recently. So let's talk about specific parts of the essay. Basically, you're applying what you've already learned about essay structure just to this more complicated assignment. You want to think of a good title, not research paper or something just very general about your topic. Think of something relevant and interesting. And if you don't have the capitalization in titles rules memorized, don't worry, just look it up. You can Google it, but the rules for capitalization and titles are generally, you always capitalize the first and last word and the major words in between. Your introduction should include the 3 key elements we've discussed in order: the hook, the bridge, and the thesis statement. Remember, we use a hook to catch the reader's attention in the opening sentences of the paragraph, a quotation, a question, an anecdote. You have a lesson and handouts on this. And we end with our thesis statement, which is our opinion statement. But we need something in between to bridge them together. You need to introduce the essay topic and connect the hook to the thesis. Prepare the reader for that thesis statement in your bridge. That's where you give background information and set up your topic. I think the challenge of writing a good introduction is making it flow together. You can have a great hook, a great bridge, and a great thesis, but you don't want them to feel like 3 separate entities in there. They've got to flow together smoothly, and that takes some work. You've got to kind of massage the sentences. It doesn't usually happen on the first try. You've got to revise and kind of tweak your sentences. From there, body paragraphs. I've estimated that you'll have 6 to 10 body paragraphs depending on how you're setting up your essay. And my advice is just to really rely on the general principles for writing a strong body paragraph. It should begin with a clear topic sentence that sets up its main idea, and the main idea needs to directly relate to your thesis statement. You need to include transitions between body paragraphs. Many of you are doing this beautifully, and within body paragraphs. And you can always go back to our previous week's lessons on all of these topics. You need ample development and support. For the research paper, this is going to be the quotations and paraphrases you include, in addition to your own analysis and ideas. Organization and unity. Organization is what order you put your body paragraphs in, that it's logical and makes sense. And the internal organization of the paragraph, that you have a topic sentence early and you kind of wrap it all up with a closing sentence. And then unity is that you stay focused on your topic sentence point. You don't wander into other topics in the paragraph. So this is a review from what we've talked about in the past. Your conclusion, restate your thesis in different words. You always want to restate your thesis. It's the driving point of your whole essay, so reword it and emphasize that key point in your closing paragraph. Another great strategy is to refer back to your opening hook. You started with something catchy, why not capitalize on that creativity and come back to it? If you started with a question, rephrase it and answer it. If you started with a quotation, touch back on it and comment on it. Or if you started with a little story, finish the story. Tell the ending of the story as part of your conclusion. And this isn't any particular order. I think what's challenging about writing a conclusion is, unlike the other paragraphs in an essay, there isn't a set order for it. You have to kind of determine that. So it's really kind of whatever makes the most sense and provides closure. One other strategy is to reflect on what you've said. Just really kind of take a step back from your topic and think about what it all means. What are the future implications? And consider making a call to action, which could work well for a research paper where you can actually ask your reader to do something, to vote a certain way, to stop eating a certain thing, to stop going to a certain business, etc. You can ask the reader to do something in the ending. You really want to end strong. You're putting a lot of time into this paper, so you don't want it to just kind of flounder at the end. You want your conclusion to really leave a good impression at the end. So you don't want to bring up new ideas or just repeat every topic you've already discussed. Try some of the strategies I've discussed here. Proofread. I know I'm telling you the obvious, but I just want to hit on this because it's a long paper. I know a lot of you are doing your work for the class after you worked all day or late at night, and you're busy. And it's easy to make errors. I mean, I expect you to have a couple typos, that's life, but I don't want you to have some major silly mistakes affect your grade. So be really careful. Leave the paper alone for at least a few hours. It's best to actually sleep on it and then come to it the next day, read it out loud, and all the errors will just kind of magically pop out, or most of them at least. Also, prepare for peer review. I really want you to get your draft in the best shape possible before you submit it for peer review. If it's your best effort, we're going to be able to get it even better through peer review and my comments. If it's just words on paper to meet a deadline, you're kind of wasting your peers' time and my time in commenting on something that's not really even your true draft. So get it in the best shape you can. I'm going to look at least part of your essay for you, so keep that in mind. If you happen to finish it early and upload it early, let me know, and because I want to try to get working on these quickly. I'm expecting you to turn in at least 5 pages plus your works cited page. It's a 5 to 7 page essay, so I want to see a pretty complete draft. And it's okay to have questions. I don't expect it to be set in stone, but I need to see a really good effort here. And we'll deal with questions as we go. And remember, submitting a draft to turnitin.com for the peer review is a commitment that you are going to participate by writing 2 thoughtful reviews of your peers' essays. So you've got to make sure that you have time by the deadline to do that and put good effort into it. Otherwise, it's simply not fair to everyone else in the class. And I hope you'll see this peer review as valuable. I've been looking at comments and seeing some really wonderful feedback, so keep up the good work. My final thoughts, be sure to take a look at the example research papers. I hope that really helps you. And finally, I think from experience, my own experience and seeing you guys go through this as students, the term research paper seems intimidating and daunting, but really it shouldn't be. It's not that different from what you've been doing. Yeah, it's longer, it's more complicated, it's going to take more time, but it's essentially the same kind of essay you've been working on. So if you've been viewing the lessons and doing the coursework and being careful about your learning, and if you've been doing well on your other essays, you got this. You're going to do great on the research paper. Just kind of put your head down and do it, and don't be afraid to ask questions. I expect there to be a lot of questions in this final unit. And that is the end of this lecture. So I'm sure you have a lot to do, so get writing.